Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council. Mayor, Skip Henderson. City Manager, Isaiah Hughley. Pops Barnes, District 1. Glenn Davis, District 2. Bruce Huff, District 3. Evelyn Turner Pugh, Mayor Pro Tem and District 4. Charmaine Crabb, District 5. Gary Allen, District 6. Mimi Woodson, District 7. Walker Garrett, District 8. Judy Thomas, Post 9 at-large Counselor. John House, Post 10 at-large Counselor. Sandra Davis, Clerk of Council. And City Attorney Clifton Fay. Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council.
And welcome to the March 26th City Council meeting. We're going to begin, as we always do, by asking God's blessings on these proceedings. And I'd like to invite to the podium Father Noel Danielewitz from St. Benedict the Moore Catholic Church. Welcome, Father. Hang on a minute. Let me get your, there we go. Get your mic turned on. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Let us pray. In the production of Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, Wendell Pierce, actor and New Orleans native, turns toward the audience and says, "Let us do something while we have the chance, at this place, at this moment of time. For all humankind is us." He delivered those lines on that hallowed ground, New Orleans, after Katrina, where many had lost their lives. For Pierce, it was one of the most cathartic moments of his life. He says, "I was standing before people of my community who had come together after this awful disaster, and we collectively said, we will do something. We will rebuild our community. We will rebuild our lives. We will rebuild the city that we love." May the Spirit of the living God be upon Mayor Henderson and the City Council of Columbus this evening, as you sit and deliberate, as you voice the concerns and the needs of the citizens of this great city. May you do your work with the wisdom of Solomon, with the strength of David, and with the integrity of Paul, and with the vision of John. May God bless your dedication and deliberations, your listening ears, and discerning hearts. May the blessing of God be upon each one of you in servant leadership. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Father, thank you, and welcome to Columbus, Georgia.
Thank you very much.
You haven't been with us very long, and we're very excited to have you in the community. We look forward to great things.
We're glad to be here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, just a moment. We've got Councilor Huff.
Father, this way. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for such a wonderful, wonderful prayer to get us started today. But based on his prayer today, I just wanted to let you know who he really is. He's new to the community, but he is at St. Benedict, and he's working already trying to rebuild the community. And he's having meetings and things and trying to pull things together and bring the community, the neighborhoods, everybody back together to make it be somewhat close to the pictures he has hanging up over there. So you have quite a vision and quite a job ahead, and I appreciate you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. And we hope that you'll have an opportunity to visit us during our 60th anniversary year, and in October we'll be having our main celebration. So have a good evening, and God bless you all.
Thank you, sir. Please send us a notice on that anniversary. We'll be there. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Huff. Next, we've got the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to be led by some amazing young people from our community schools program. So I'm going to ask them to come up, and if you please stand and join me facing the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic of which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job, great job. Now we're going to let you, if you don't mind, give us your name, your grade, and what school you attend.
My name is Lamaria Bower, and the school I go to is Rigdon Road Elementary School, and I'm in second.
Second. Welcome.
My name is Trenton Davis II. I go to Fort Middle School, and I am in the 6th grade. I am Jacob Shahir. I go to Reach Road Leadership Academy, and I am in the 4th grade.
Hello, my name is Sebastian. My school I go to is Johnson Elementary. I am in 4th grade.
Hello, my name is Trinity Davis. I go to St. Mary's Road, and I am in the 1st grade.
Hi, my name is Jada Shahir, and I go to Reese Road, and I am in the 5th grade.
Fantastic. And introduce yourself, if you don't mind.
Hi, I'm Aggie Lumpkin, and I'm site supervisor at Midland Academy, and I work with Parks and Rec Community School Division.
Fantastic. Thank you. Y'all give them a hand again, please. Thank y'all. Y'all did a great job. I got to tell you, I've received the most interesting question I've had from these bright young people. One of them asked me if, as mayor, I could fire the president. I quickly told him I'm not even sure I have control of my own house with my wife there. So, but thank y'all. Y'all did an amazing job. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Motion second, approve the minutes. Any edits? Any questions? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Minutes passed. A couple of quick announcements before we get to a presentation by our auditor. We have sort of rebranded the Let's Talk with the Mayor events that have been held throughout the community. We've rebranded them as Let's Talk Columbus because that's sort of our focus. We want to talk about Columbus, about your Columbus, the Columbus that you want to see. And the first one will be Thursday, this week, the 28th, at the Liberty Theater. It'll start at, and I should know this, it'll start 6 to 7:30. So we'll hope y'all will join us. The department heads will be there. The mayor will be there. And, of course, Councilor Woodson, it's her district. She will be opening the meeting. And we hope you'll join us and bring your questions and your suggestions. We'd love to hear. Second announcement pertains to some of the storm damage that we have experienced in certain areas of our community. As most of you who have paid attention to it know that on April 4th, the moratorium on the Tree for Fee program expires. Well, we're extending that moratorium only to a defined area, the areas that were impacted, and that will continue indefinitely. We've got some I think some borders that we can give you tonight, but we will release a map to the media tomorrow, and we'll post it on our website, and we'll make sure that it's available. So if you have any questions, you can visit our website or call 311, and they'll tell you if your area is one of those affected areas. So we will continue that moratorium in order to try to help our citizens dispose of some of that debris that the tornado left behind. Okay? All right, now I'll invite to the podium our auditor and ask him if he'll make his findings known on a whistleblower complaint we had from somebody in the private sector. John?
That is correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Manager, Mr. Attorney. It's good to be here with you tonight. Tonight I'm going to report on an investigation of some city procedures that was brought before you on the public agenda back in November by Mr. David Erickson of Greyhawk Homes. I had the opportunity to follow up at your request to see if I could work with him and help to resolve those issues a bit. And so that's exactly what happened. He was here one week, and the following Monday, I was out to meet with his folks. Let me see if I can get this thing going. Uh-oh. Maybe. There we go. All right, so really what happened was he complained to, or referred, the complaint was referred by Councilor Garrett to me in late October of 2018, last year. I began to gather information on the processes that were involved, and in gathering that information on permit volumes and subdivision engineering and plat reviews. The length of time to obtain the permits on special cases with delays with new plans examiner was one of the things. Oops, I may have missed one. Anyway, Mr. Erickson appeared on the public agenda on November 27th at the council meeting to discuss these. That's when council authorized the internal auditors to meet with Mr. Erickson and work to resolve it. And we met with he and his staff and key members on December the 3rd at the office of Greyhawk Homes. Some of the key areas that he wanted us to look at were the length of time to obtain permits on specific cases with delays, and some of that was related to having a new plans examiner involved. Also, the subdivision engineering approval process and request for additional information after it had once been reviewed. And then subdivision plat approval process. He also had some concerns about the final building inspection and the tree inspection timing, and sometimes it was conflicting with real estate closing schedules. And then there was the perceived political interference. And I will try to cover those for you quickly. We requested a meeting after I met with him, with the Deputy City Manager Hodge and the department heads of Inspection and Codes, Engineering and Planning in mid-December. The meeting included discussion of these key issues and related processes, and we requested residential permit processing times for the last 2 years for 2017 and 18 for Greyhawk Homes and all builders from inspection codes, and then a flow charting of the permitting process. We also requested a flow chart of subdivision engineering review and subdivision plat process and the process times for each. After we had the group meeting, Ms. Hodge, myself, and the department heads, then we broke out and met with individual department heads to discuss timelines and concerns. We looked at the flow charts and reviewed those. We looked at processing timelines. We looked at possible delays and what might be causing them. We looked at process improvement and delay prevention methods. We also looked at variance review process with Planning and Zoning Appeals Boards, because we wanted to make sure we had those in proper alignment with coming up to City Council, so that the board didn't meet the day after the last council meeting of the month, and it would mean it'd be 2 or 3 weeks before we could get back together. We also had a meeting with the chief appraiser in the tax assessor's office regarding the permitting delays, and noting that permits were severely delayed following the departure of their GIS technician in the assessor's office due to a lack of backup. That was about 1.5 years ago. We noted that the GIS technician departure occurred during the implementation of the new tax software and the countywide reassessment, a time when they were extremely busy in that department. And a new GIS technician is now employed and the backlog has been reduced. We had follow-up meetings with Deputy City Manager Hodge and the department heads after working with the department heads individually. We discussed the process improvements that had been made. We noted efforts to reduce permitting time and improve proficiency of the new plans examiner on the process. The Inspection and Codes Director gained approval from Public Works Director and City Arborist for Inspection and Codes Inspector to finalize the tree approvals at the time of final inspection on residential properties. Now, the arborist still does it on commercial ones and also does it on subdivision development engineering, but just on the final of each individual home. Because frequently that final inspection and the tree inspection occurs generally on the morning of the closing in that afternoon. So this can be a real delay for the realtors. It's a real stressor. It's also for the attorneys that are trying to get the sale closed. We resolved some terminology issues with surveyor letters and assigned responsibility for interaction with the surveyors in a follow-up meeting we had with the tax assessor's office just about a week and a half ago. And we also talked about the GIS assignment of the parcel ID. We discussed the GIS technician's duties relative to parcel edits and assignment of parcel ID to enable permit issuance, and noted the times to complete have recently risen. And it seems we've had quite a few subdivisions that have come in for a review and plats to be processed. We've also scheduling a follow-up meeting with the tax assessor's office to review the current workload and consider alternatives that we can use to reduce time. It may mean some reassignment of some duties between the two different GIS technicians, perhaps the one in engineering and the one in tax assessors, or it may mean that we have to look at getting them some help over there in the tax assessor's office to get these cleaned up and done faster. Following that, I contacted Mr. Erickson to schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss the process improvements and significant changes, and he actually returned my call the following Monday, and we discussed them via the telephone. He expressed thanks for the review process and commended us on how we did it and also on the noted improvements. And so then I went ahead and scheduled it for a presentation to update the council tonight, since you had received this complaint formally in a council session on the public agenda. But at this time, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I think Ms. Hodge is here and probably some of the department heads if you had specifics that relate to their processes. But we really did improve processes. We created backups for each step through there. So if an employee is out on sick leave or vacation or whatever it might be, there's someone that will pick it up and carry it through to completion. And I was, when I first spoke with Ms. Hodge, she's, I wasn't sure, how she's going to feel about this, but she said, I believe we'll be able to find some improvements that we can make. And surprisingly, we did, and I think we actually improved each of the 4 processes that we looked at. We also looked at the process for the commercial developments, which is quite a bit lengthier, but that was not part of Mr. Erickson's request, so we covered that as well. Any questions?
Any questions of council? Well, Mr. Redmond, I tell you, you're exactly right. I think when our citizens get involved and let us know that they're having some challenges with any of our processes, we immediately try to take a look at them and see if there's a way to gain efficiencies and ways that we can shift some things. Technology has allowed us to do some additional things. So, it's a good process. We want to be held accountable. As a government, we want to be transparent. We want to make sure that our citizens know that any suggestion, any issue that they have, we take very seriously. And I thank you for your diligence in going through these.
Well, when I spoke with Mr. Erickson last week, I thanked him for bringing the issues forth, because if no one ever complains or you don't know that a problem perhaps exists, there's not much likelihood that you're going to improve it unless we just embark on reviewing all of our procedures at once, so in different groups. So I did thank him for that, and I want to thank each of those department heads, as well as Ms. Hodge and the GIS technicians that work with us, and people from the tax assessor's office, because it is a collaborative effort. And when it crosses departmental lines and under different leadership heads, and the tax assessor's under a board, so we wanted to make sure that we had proper coordination, and I do believe we've made progress, and we'll probably continue to improve a little bit more.
We've got tremendous employees, and they work very, very hard, and they take in a lot of volume of work, and so sometimes we're so busy doing the work at hand that we don't really have the time or take the time to try to look for efficiency. So it's a great partnership when the citizens bring something forward to us. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's it for my agenda. We'll turn it over to the city attorney. You want to hit your button? I'll see if I can get your light turned on there.
All right, thank
sir.
you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Got a fairly long agenda this evening. There are several votes up first. We need to take action on the first item is second reading of a zoning at 4620 Warm Springs Road, going for construction trade use. Ms. Blankenship petition is ready for approval.
Is the motion? Motion second to approve. Bruce, would you please, any discussion? If y'all would, please enter your votes. All right, and that passes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Blankenship, for being here again. That has passed. Next, Mayor, is the amendment in the Unified Development Ordinance for microbreweries and microdistilleries to be permitted in the Uptown, Central Riverfront, General Commercial, and Light Manufacturing districts, and that's ready for approval.
Motion second to approve. Any discussion? Bruce, please cue the vote. Councilors, please enter your votes. That is approved unanimously. Well, excuse me,
All right.
with those that are here.
Next item is the similar addition of microbrewery, microdistillery definitions into Chapter 3 of the Alcohol Code. Ready for approval.
Motion second to approve. Any discussion? Please cue to vote. Councilors, enter your votes, please. That's approved.
All right. And item 4 is an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance with respect to the tree preservation and replacement section, as we discussed last time, and it's ready for adoption.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All right, please cue the vote. Councilors, please enter your votes. That is approved.
All right, now we have some zoning public hearings. First one this evening is property at 2870 Christine Road. Is Mr. Jane here this evening? I'm here representing. Okay, come on up, sir, and give him your name and address. This is going for single family, from single family 2 to single family 3. If you would, just tell them who you are for the record. We'll see if there are any questions.
Yeah, I'm Chad Jandell. I'm a builder here in Columbus. We're just rezoning this property just to put a house on it.
Okay, any questions around the table? Anybody in the audience want to be heard? All right, don't see any. Thank you for being here. We're going to vote on that at the regular meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mayor, next one is the carport use requested by Mrs. Chester at 820 Fifth Avenue. Ms. Chester here this evening? I am. Okay. Come on up, ma'am. Just give them your name and address for the record, see if we got questions.
Katrina Chester, 820 Fifth Avenue.
It's a carport use only, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Anybody in the audience want to be heard on this? Don't see any hands. We'll vote on this in 2 weeks at the regular meeting. Ms.
Okay.
Chester, thank you. All right, the next property is at 1147 6th Avenue and 512 12th Street. Mr. Henson is here as the applicant. This is requested use apartments, office, warehouse, going from light manufacturing to uptown, recommended for approval. Do we have some photos related to this? We can put them on the screen. Mr. Henson, you can go on and give them your name and address, tell them what your plan is.
I'm Ken Henson. I live at 612 Broadway, and I didn't know this at the time, but this was the original Coca-Cola bottling building in Columbus, Georgia, that opened in 1905. I think Gary Allen and some others probably remember one over 17th Street that we went to when we played Little League Baseball. But this one preceded that, and you almost wouldn't know it was there, but some of it is still on the building, and it's across from Golden's Foundry on 6th Avenue. So this was the third Coca-Cola franchise granted in the state of Georgia. So I thought you might be interested in knowing that. I don't know what we're going to do with it, but we're going to renovate it. And that's sort of the inside that shows the old offices, and it had a skylight all the way to the 3rd floor, because back then they didn't have good lighting. So the central area there was where they bottled the Coca-Cola.
Okay.
So,
Any questions around the table? And
I don't see any.
anybody in the audience want to be heard on this? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Henson. We'll vote in 2 weeks on that. Mayor, next item up is an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Ordinance text to replace provisions pertaining to personal care homes and foster care homes with definitions that are consistent with the state law. Councilor Davis has been very involved in several meetings on this topic, and Councilor Barnes, who's not here right now, but this has been worked on for a long time. Councilor Davis, you got any comments you want to make? Okay. This is just a text amendment, again, to be consistent with state law, and we'll bring it back for a vote at the next meeting.
May want to let Mr. Jones highlight
Mr.
some of
Jones.
those changes that are going to bring it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, members of council, this has been a conversation we've had since the last 6 months worth in terms of issues dealing with personal care homes and the problems they cause or potentially cause to neighborhoods and whatnot. We were charged with the idea of going back and looking at how we can clean this up and how we can better manage and regulate these uses. We were asked to go back and look at the current zoning requirements, identify how we could better regulate these personal care type 2 and type 3 homes in the community itself, make sure we all understood what the Fair Housing Act is and what it does to us and how it really can affect us, and then how we go about identifying what real guidelines we need to have. I'm going to walk you through this. I apologize, I did not bring the printouts of the PowerPoint. We can provide that to you, but these, as the mayor's already indicated to you, are just the highlights of the ordinance itself. Everything we're dealing with really is primarily dealing with the definitions of what we're going to consider now personal care homes. This is the existing one now for a personal care home, which means basically that is being an establishment providing personal care for more than 24 hours. We're getting rid of that one, and we're coming back with a proposal here. It shows really this is a much more detailed definition. The other thing you need to carry away from this conversation about the fact is we've gone back and had several meetings with representatives from the fire department, from inspection and codes, from some state agencies as well. We've invited also, I think at the time, some personal care home reps locally, just to get a feel for what we're doing with. We understood that what we're trying to marry up to now is really what the fire department's having to deal with, which is a different definition of what we have in our ordinance. And we're trying to make sure that those two marry up, along with whatever state regulations that may be provided also. Make sure we're in sync with that. And what you're seeing tonight is really the definitions that reflect that in terms of how we deal with what it takes during the ownership and management of this business by personal care for 2 or more adults who are not related to the administrator and so forth. This gives us better definition really in terms of what the personal care homes mean into this community, what we're trying to achieve. I want you to also know that the yeoman's work to all this, the heavy lifting, really comes out of the city attorney's office with Luke Sheftaw and Clifton helping us get to this point. But this will be the new definition that's proposed now for personal care homes involved with that. On the existing personal care home type 1 now is really anything that provides personal care, including foster care for children. The one thing we want to try to separate too, and not doing all these definitions, is taking away this idea of children being definitely in a personal care home and establishing a definition that it talks just for their needs only, and nothing in trying to mix the two together. Under the proposed definition here, what we're proposing now is we're going to take out this word, including foster care for children in a personal care type home, a personal care home type 1 rather. We're not getting rid of the type 1 uses. Remember again also that under the fair housing, anything with 6 or less, we basically cannot regulate. We can monitor it, we just can't regulate it. We have to depend really on those state agencies to come forward and help us with that monitoring. And we've done a better job with that. We got a little bit better progress with that. I'm not
Not to the point where I'd like to be, but we're closer, I think, in terms of how we achieve that. There's a personal care home type 2, of course, where in this case here we're talking about, again, foster care for children. You can put foster care now in a personal care home type 2. And then you also can limit from between 7 and 18. The proposal now calls for, we take out the wording dealing with anything with foster care for children, and it runs from 7 to 15. This, again, mirrors what the state fire codes are dealing with in terms of inspecting these homes and dealing with that, make sure we're in sync with that, also in dealing with the state agencies as well. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. Our definition for personal care services also has been reviewed in terms of what we look for in that. We really are getting rid of that definition altogether. We're just taking it out of the ordinance. What's proposed here is to make sure we are not limited to individual assistance or supervision, but things like helping folks that need needs in terms of daily living, such as eating or bathing or whatever the case may be. That now will define what we call personal care services in our community. Foster care home. Now, this is where we're breaking this subject out a little bit deeper. Now we're talking about defining what a foster care home is. We don't have this definition in the ordinance now, but it would actually deal with children in terms of where, the thing you need to take away from this definition is a private home that's being used by a child placing agency, which has been approved by a child placing agency. That's important. We've had situations, not necessarily with children, but folks will just start taking folks in. They'll take the money, but they're not being approved or regulated by any type of state agency. This, we hope, will prevent that from happening with that. And also, in looking at foster care home in this particular case, means no more than 6 children who are unrelated to the foster parent or parents themselves. So you can have a home, bring foster kids into it, but you got to be regulated by the state or the state agency itself.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yes.
Jones. Councilor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor. Rick, in this definition, second line, should we add the word state, approved by the state child placing agency?
We'll take that under advisement because I don't have an answer. I would think you may be correct about that. I'm just trying to think of a situation in my head where it wouldn't be a state agency involved, maybe somebody else. But
And some of these are not governmental agencies. They may be private, but under contract with the state. That's why we wanted to stick with this.
Okay.
This is language right out of the state statute.
Well, I visited with a juvenile facility, and my understanding was there's some approval or supervisory role the state plays in his being able to house children there. So he is responsible to the state for how he operates his business. That's why I was thinking we might want to think about that.
All right. I'm having to lean heavily on the city attorney.
Yeah, I would like to leave it as is. We know these are state-approved agencies that we're talking about. I just know there may be a contract here or there with a private agency that the state approves to do this type service. So
have we run that down with the state? I mean, are there others out there operating a foster care child type facility that are not governed by anybody?
They're all state licensed, these agencies. Any agency that does this placing is going to be licensed by the state. They sent people from DFACS, Human Services, Juvenile Justice, Juvenile Court. They all came to these meetings that Councilor Davis had. So, I mean, that's what we're talking about, state-approved agencies. But this is the exact definition in the statute, and we wanted to stick with that exact wording.
Okay. Thank you.
There's also the definition now that we are including for group foster home, which is really that number between 6 and 15, pretty much along the same lines as the foster care, which is 6 or under. So there are 2 clear, distinct definitions now we're proposing that identifies what a foster care home is and what a group foster home is, rather than just depending on personal care 1 or 2 definition to make that work. this, we think, again, as the city attorney's alluded to, it already mirrors what we're talking about under state law today, so we're trying to do that. Personal care home type 3 is one we still have, where it talks about 19 or more clients that are aged and disabled or ill, and it goes on to talk about hospitals and clinics. That third line I got looking at again today, where it talks about including convalescent and nursing facilities and providing personal care and so forth. We already have a definition for those, for convalescent and personal care. So we're really just striking that whole definition, that whole use out. If you've got someone that meets this kind of definition with 19 or more, you're really talking about more along the lines of a nursing home anyway, or something of a convalescent home that provides that kind of care. There's no need for this any longer in our estimation. Finally, I just want to show you under the foster care and group where these particular uses could go. Foster care, of course, is a permitted use really in any of our any of our residential areas involved with that, even to the RM1 and 2, which is basically multifamily from that standpoint. If you go to a group home, though, you're going to come in and ask for a special exception in those two particular categories, those particular zones. They will be permitted in neighborhood commercial, and they will be also permitted in terms of in general commercial use. Again, those are more than 6 and less than the 15. So those are where we are with that. There are some other changes in the ordinance itself that we describe, but primarily these are the things I want you to know about. These are things that are really being changed more than anything else, in order to get a better handle, a better understanding about how we can control these personal care homes and now these foster care homes as well, provide services for those who really need it.
Okay. Any questions for Director Jones? You push the button. Councilor Davis, did you have something? All right.
I did want to say, I understand the question that Councilor Allen was asking, and I think when you really look at it, I think all these entities that you're talking about are that we're talking about have to have a license, and those licenses are governed at a state level. So that's important to note. We also found out one thing that I want to bring forward to council today, that we found out that there's somewhat different levels in the foster care system, different levels of care, different care levels or categories of needs based on the children, where they're at, their situation, all the other details that might be involved. One of the things we found out is that there is a category in our UDO called transitional housing, which is very important to understand, and I think the staff needs to really take a look at this whenever there's an application that's being filled out, exactly the nature of the children that are being served in residential neighborhoods. So I wanted to make that clear to the council. It's not being stated here, but they are quite possibly, for lack of a better term, operations dealing with child care in residential neighborhoods that don't meet the zoning requirements. So that really needs to be understood, and I think it's spelled out clear in the UDO. If that's the case, then they would not be able to operate in residential neighborhoods. They would have to operate in the appropriate zones. So I did want to make that known, that was discovered. It's in a different category called transitional housing, and there is a definition that goes along with that. So it's important, again, I would say there's different levels when you're dealing with foster care in the state of Georgia. There's different levels of care that the state recognizes when dealing with these kids, and they're all different. I said it before, they all have different stories. A lot of them, they don't ask to be in those situations, but a lot of them have different stories, and they come from different environments. So when you look at the dynamics of taking care of these children, it's very important that the chemistry matches up especially when you're dealing in residential neighborhoods, foster care homes, foster group homes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? And I do want to, since there are no other comments, I want to commend Counselor Davis. He's had a long time passion for foster children, and he has worked real hard fighting to try to make some necessary amendments to this, so I thank you, sir. All right, this looks to be all, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We will bring that back for a vote in 2 weeks then. Item 9, Mayor, we're going to ask that be delayed until there's an update scheduled on the city manager's agenda, but if that's okay.
Sure.
The item 10 on parking management districts, it's a first reading. Ms. Goodwin is here, but there have been discussions about making it easier for people to understand the rules on the parking management districts, particularly downtown. This will allow someone to stay in the same block but change the side of the street they're on or the direction and still be legal under the ordinance. Don't know if Ms. Goodwin wants to comment or the city manager.
Unless there are questions, they can make some brief comments. I'd ask that Deputy City Manager Goodwin. I think it's pretty simple from one side of the, would you explain?
Yeah, this
briefly?
is really just housekeeping. It's just clarifying the boundaries of the parking management district from 9th Street to 14th, and then from Bay, of course, over to 3rd. And so it's just really cleaning it up is what this ordinance does.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Any
of
other
council?
questions?
Doesn't appear to be any.
Okay.
All right. We'll bring that for a vote in 2 weeks then. The technology policy is being revised, item 11. This is being done by ordinance to make it clear that certain activities on city equipment are prohibited, and the IT director, of course, Mr. Tolley, is in control of all of this, and it also spells out that confidential information or privileged information will remain privileged and confidential unless it's released pursuant to a court order or pursuant to a proper investigation. But Mr. Tully, you have some comments?
Just the big picture is that these haven't been revised since 1999. With the new technologies we have in place, we're modernizing the language so that all of the ordinance would be applicable to today's standards.
Any other questions of Mr. Tolley? Doesn't appear to be any, sir. Thank you.
All right, we'll bring that back for a vote in 2 weeks. The last item we need a vote on right this minute is a resolution authorizing a special exception to allow a boarding house at 3019 North Lumpkin Road. This been recommended for approval by Planning Advisory and the Planning Department. Applicant is Charles Wright. Okay, Mr. Wright is here. Give him your name and address.
First, like I said, I'm hard of hearing.
All right.
My name is Charles Wright.
What's your address, sir? Can you give him your address?
3019 North Lumpkin Road.
Okay. And Mr. Jones, the Planning Department has recommended approval of your request, but now we've got to see if there are any questions in the room. Anybody at the table have a question? All right, anybody in the audience want to be heard on this request for special exception?
We do have some.
Okay. We're going to let these folks come up and make their comment. If y'all would give your name and address over at the microphone for the record.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Geraldine Kaysen, and
And your address?
my address is 3004 North Lunkin Road.
Okay, and then tell the council what your concerns may be.
My concern is for the in and out, people coming in and out, and the police and ambulances over there so much. He seemed to be a quiet person. It's just the people that be there, that be at the house, that I'm concerned about, and the type of people that are there.
Okay, well, the definition is in the papers on your ECAP and in your notebooks, boarding house, but we don't get these requests too often, but it is a permitted use under the UDO, so.
Counselor Huff.
Director Jones.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah. Is there a way for me to have the opportunity to meet with them and both sides to get a chance to see this before we approve it?
Yes, sir.
Or
Absolutely.
disapprove it?
Yes, sir.
So you can request a delay.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to request a delay to have a chance to speak with everyone.
Okay. We can make that happen.
How
Two-week-
long?
2 week delay? Is
Motion,
that good enough?
motion to delay and a second for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We have some discussion. Hang on, Counselor Crabb.
Is there an application process, or is this more, are there applications for this boarding house?
Yes, ma'am. This is a special exception, meaning that you've got to approve the use going into this particular zone.
Well, I'm talking about for Mr. Wright. Does he make the residents fill out applications, and do you do background checks and things like that on them?
Well, that part of it, there's no, excuse my voice is going, but no, not to my knowledge about background checks. From our perspective, what he has to do is fill out an application for a special exception request. We treat it just almost like a rezoning itself, in the sense we send out notice within 300 feet. We require a sign to be posted in the front yard, close to the road, and then we have to advertise, just like we do a zoning in the paper. And then we have a hearing in front of the Planning Advisory Commission. They make a recommendation. Planning Department reviews it also, makes a recommendation, and it comes to this body here for your final approval.
Right, I'm just wondering if we were to approve this, is there any kind of a screening process? Mr. Wright might be able to answer this question. Is there any type of screening process that you do that might address some of the issues that these ladies have?
Do you understand the question? She's asking, is there a screening process for anybody that may come stay?
Yes.
You want to elaborate on that for us?
People that stay there is my friends and kinfolks, and they have a medical condition. They have leg service comes all the time to take them to the hospital. They go to the Bradley Center, Piedmont, and the other one. And the police officer come with the ambulance service. That's why it seemed like that. But they always go to the hospital when they come there.
Okay.
Counselor Huff, are you finished?
Yeah, I think they're getting the information for me now. And,
Okay. Well, there was a motion, a second to delay for 2
Right.
weeks.
We'll just get a
So
vote on that.
If there's no other discussion as to that motion, I'll ask all those in favor of a 2-week delay, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it's delayed 2 weeks, so that Counselor Huff has an opportunity to confer with the individuals.
Thank you.
All right,
All
yes,
right.
sir.
Beside our one delayed item that we'll come back to on the city manager's agenda, we've got a motion that Councilor Davis, I think, would like to put on the table concerning the pending towing contract matter.
Councilor Davis?
Yes, Mayor, it's probably more along the lines of a personal privilege, if I may, but, it's become relevant to me that there's a matter that's coming up tonight, we've already discussed in the future, that we really need to go ahead and take care of. And I'd like to make a motion to reject all bids pertaining to the towing contract, and that the city manager will take it back out, form a new RFP, and put it back out to the proposed vendors.
All right, there's a motion second to reject the bids and that are, and just, I guess, continue on a month-to-month. Councilor Huff, to the motion.
To the motion, well, yeah, to the whole idea.
Yeah.
I was hoping we'd get to this a little bit later after we heard from some people on public agenda. I've been searching for the right words all day to say that we as a body, we have a great council here and we're a great body of people. We are not trying to interfere with the process at all. We're not trying to gear anyone into who gets chosen, but the process was not the issue. The process flowed through and some things transpired. And I just think that if this goes back out, it needs to be monitored however procurement does their work. My understanding is from beginning to end, the process went well. There are some things that took place at the end that didn't make sense. I had no contact with the potential vendor until after all of this started happening and all of the process had taken place. But I just think for us to be going back to the prayer that was given today, we have to take care of our citizens. We have to become a better community, better citizens, better friends to one another. And it doesn't matter win, lose, or draw, but I have to know, and I think others up here have to know too, that when we go through this procurement process and we have a winner and we have a loser, that everything was done fairly from beginning to end. And in the procedures and things, like I say, I don't want it to appear that I'm leaning one way or the other, but I am leaning toward the fact that some things were not done correctly. So not to prolong it, I'm searching, I'm scrambling in my head not to say the wrong thing. In our agenda, from time to time, I like to peek in to see what's coming, what's in the procurement process. Do I have any projects coming up that are due to take place in the future as far as people asking about bridges and things of that nature? When will we start the actual process? So in following this process, I think this particular contract, ended probably the end of December. And we're in March now, and we're trying to figure out who the vendor will be. And I kind of asked a question after that process was over. There was a car accident at McDonald's and Denny's on Macon Road. And a car went into the side of Denny's one night. And I just happened to see it. And one thing led to another. So I made a phone call the next day to procurement to ask about whatever happened to the bid. That's how it all started. And they said that it was going forward. It had to be scored and things of that nature. And that's all the information I received. And when we got back to this point, in that last process is kind of where I'm stuck. And we need to really look at In the past, we've had X number of people to participate. And if there's going to be any adjustment to that process, I think procurement needs to know, city manager needs to know, the council needs to know if something's changing that we haven't done in the past. So please don't take it wrong. I think where we are now is we're getting ready to take a vote. And the vote will take place, and then you will hear from some people in the audience, which I think is kind of out of order right now, but I don't know. I spoke to someone today, someone that I trust, and we believe in each other. And my comment was, the process needs to go forward. It needs to go back out, I think, because it cannot last to the end of the year. It needs to be done right away. If that's the direction we're going, it needs to go right back out. And it needs to be monitored to make sure it's carried out correctly, because in the discussion that we had, in a respectful manner, one of the vendors was thought to be a small player in the game. And he's not a small player in the game. And that he would not have the potential or the ability to do big towing, clean up accidents. And pictures are out there, people who know, have seen. Both towing companies have been able to tow 18-wheelers, buses, charter buses, school buses, cement trucks. So everything's equal as far as being able to clean up and go forward. So, like I said, we can't pick and choose, but please, after today, going forward, we need to make sure that the process is followed, because all of you out here in the future, if you decide to bid on a contract, you need to know that it was fair. You need to know that it was handled well from beginning to end, and that council had no interference. And we're doing all we can to stay out of it. It's just I'm feeling some kind of way today, as you can well tell. And for those that know me, I always say this. I try my best to stay on the right side of things. I make mistakes like everybody else, but I try my best. So I appreciate you listening and understanding where I am today, because Columbus is too large of a city. And the last thing I will say is, I came back to Columbus in 1980. I had gone to school and played baseball at Florida State with kids from all over the world. And when I returned to my hometown, I thought just maybe things had changed from the 70s to the 80s. And I had a talk with my parents. My dad died in '92. There was still not the changes I thought should take place. My mom in 2000, we're still not there. 2010, it's 2020 next year. And Columbus is a place for a lot of good people. And the shenanigans and the nonsense needs to quit. We need to all live together, participate together, and make this city the great city that it should be. Thank you.
All right. Councilor Davis, you have any other comments?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say those are words well expressed, Councilor Huff. I think the purpose is knowing that there's concerns, there's indifferences, and possibly perceived tension in this whole matter. And that's why I think it's best to go ahead and let's get this out on the table and just move forward from here. The process does need to be fair, equitable, and just. That's how it should be, and certainly there can't be any essence of influence or a process that's tainted. And I think where we're at now, based on that, the best thing to do is just to go ahead and to reject the current proposal that is being put in front of us, or the current RFP. advise the city manager to move forward as quick as possible from a new RFP, and I said propose vendors. What I meant by that is anybody that wants to put their name in the hat. But it actually should be put back out to the public and go through a new process and may the best man win. I think that's the best way to resolve this. Certainly, if people want to be heard from, that's fine, but in knowing that, that may help relieve or to maybe resolve some of the concerns and indifferences and tensions that I talked about.
All right, there is a motion second on the table to reject the bid and continue with a month-to-month and put it out for rebid immediately, by the way, without any delay. Any further comments to the motion? If not, I'll entertain all those in favor of rejecting the bids and starting over, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Those in favor, please raise your right hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
All opposed?
1.
All right, it carries. Mr. City Manager, I think you had a...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say, first of all, I concur with the motion made by Councilor Davis. I think that's the right thing to do, and I support that and want to assure you and the public that our employees are professionals. They didn't just start doing this bids or RFPs. They know what they're doing. They know how to do it. They do it right, and it's done in a fair and equitable manner. I've been city manager 14 years. I was deputy city manager 7 years and got to watch the process, and in over 20 years, I've not seen a problem around this table with process or vendors being treated fairly. And so we will expedite the process. We'll continue on a month-to-month until we can bring something back to this council. And I can assure you that it will be done fairly, and all vendors will be treated equally and have the same opportunity to compete. That's what I can assure you.
Thank you. Councilor Huff, you have another comment?
Yeah. Make no mistake that I love the employees of a consolidated government. And I'm not insinuating that they're not professional and that they didn't do a great job. But there are some steps after they did what they had to do that involved, I guess, some others. And they may all be, I guess, employees, but nobody in the procurement area did anything wrong. Don't even think that that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that once it went through the process, even in talking to the different people, no one has complained about the process, not even the person that participated. The vendor said the process was excellent, no problems at all, not angry about anything. But however it is that it goes through the process and we put together committees to score whatever we do at the end, that's where I think the attention needs to be going forward. And that's what I'm requesting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Yeah, and you know, listen, here's the deal. Now, this is all I'm going to say about that, is that unintentionally, I think, there was some interference that went against the written guidelines of the procurement ordinance. It doesn't matter if it was intentional or unintentional. The fact is it occurred, and it occurred, frankly, on behalf of both of the primary bidders. So I think that Councilor Davis's motion and this council's decision to reject them both and start over is sound. But I tell you, everybody involved going forward knows the rules pretty clearly now. And I know we've got people scheduled to speak on the public agenda tonight, and we're not going to try to stop anybody from speaking, but I tell you, knowing what you know, if you come up and address this body when, frankly, this bid is turning right back around, I think, I've talked to the city attorney, and I think you run the risk of jeopardizing your qualifications by doing the exact same thing that kind of put us in this pickle in the first place. And that is communicating with the council or communicating with anybody outside of the procurement team under those guidelines. So I'm not going to deny anybody would never do that, an opportunity to speak, but I just want you to understand that knowing what you know, if you come up here and you lobby or you try to sell your service, you run the risk of and jeopardize your ability to contend for this contract. So anyway, I think that's enough on that. Mr. City Attorney, do you have anything further?
Mayor, the only other request we'd have is a short executive session on litigation at the end of the regular meeting, and we'll come back to item 9, like I said, in just a bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right, well, we'll move on to the public agenda, and the first individual is Mr. Leo Goodsell, representing the Military Order of the World Wars, Columbus Chapter, and I believe he's got a presentation to make to one of our favorite folks. Good evening, sir.
Evening, Mayor. It is such a pleasure to be here tonight, councilors.
You give your name and your address, please, sir.
I am. I'm Leo Goodsell, and I live at 6443 Cricket Lane here in Columbus, and I am the commander of the local chapter of the Military Order of the World Wars. And real briefly, the Military Order of the World Wars, it's a veterans organization of former and retired military officers, founded in 1919 by General of the Army John Pershing, with his request that his officers continue serving America after their active military service following World War I. And since then, the order has expanded to all throughout the country and into territories. We serve, the MOWW serves America's youth by hosting Youth Leadership Conference programs throughout the United States, awards programs for the ROTC and junior ROTC cadets, the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. Additionally, we honor others who excel in areas of national security, homeland security, and law and order arenas, and we host the Massing of the Color ceremonies in conjunction with key patriotic holidays. Last August, and I'm sorry it took us so long to get to this, last August we held our national convention in Columbus, and we received some of the finest support we've ever had. So, Haley, if you would join me. We were so impressed with the treatment, professionalism, and Haley's ability to anticipate the needs of the MOWW during the convention. Once connected with her, I gave her the general needs of the organization, and she took charge of the rest and arranged all of our needs. She did everything she could to ensure we had a smooth running and snag-free event, and as a result of her leadership, direction of her staff, they contributed to us having a successful convention. And with that, we have, everyone can see? Thank you. And also the photo here.
Thank you.
And And also, if Ashley would, I'm sorry, that was Haley Henderson Tillery. I should have given her whole name. And Ashley, if you would join me. Ashley Woitena, right, with the Chamber of Commerce. I'm sorry, Convention and Visitors Bureau. Ashley with the CVB took charge of all non-conference center operations to ensure the rest of the convention went smoothly. I gave Ashley general orders on what we needed for the convention to include hotels, tours, meeting spaces, food, and many other things. She took charge. Oh, geez. She took charge and handled all the basic convention planning, the tours, coordination, and even led one of the motor coaches to Fort Benning. And she also helped to make the convention and execution of the convention much easier for us as we had our convention here in Columbus. And she also receives, and both of these say, the Military Order of the World Wars proudly presents this award to Haley Henderson, Tillery, and Ashley Whitena for her leadership and excellence in support of the 2018 MOWW Convention. And I just wanted to say that both Haley and Ashley were great to work with. They took a huge load off of us during the convention planning and the execution. And because these two were what I say are unsung heroes, because they do everything in the background, I wanted to ensure that they receive public recognition for all they do for the city of Columbus. And so I thank you to Haley and to Ashley for the services to the city and to all of us that they provide this fine city to host conventions and tourism activities. And I think there might be some supporters of theirs here also. We've got Peter Bowden is here. Thank you very much.
Mr. Goodsell, thank you. Thank you for recognizing these folks, and thank you for bringing your convention to Columbus, Georgia. We're very proud of the work that Mrs. Tillery and Ashley both do from different organizations. They always come together to make sure that anybody that visits this community has an amazing experience. Councilor House?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to add, since I was at the convention, I can echo the comments that Leo Goodsell made about how well they did putting up with a bunch of old, hard-headed, cantankerous retirees and veterans, which was not always easy. And, of course, Ashley had to get me in and out of Fort Benning on a tour bus, which was a particular issue, I'm sure, at times. But certainly I want to thank them for what they did, because they truly did a great job and made Columbus look wonderful.
Ladies, thank y'all very much. Mr. Goodsell, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And I'm trying hard not to ask Councilor House if that challenge was because of some security issue. I'm a little confused, but I got you. All right, next up on the public agenda is Mr. Charlie Griffin. Mr. Griffin, I won't repeat what I was saying earlier, but I just want you to be aware.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Please state your name and your address.
Hey, my name is Charlie Griffin. I'm the owner of Griffin & Griffin Towing. My address is 8888 East Wayne Court, Midland, Georgia. Just so that we can, in accordance with the mayor comments, we just said we're going to hold my comments since the matter been currently pulled, and I'll just hold my comments till a later time.
Okay, sir.
All right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for what you do for the citizens of this community. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Okay. Next is Ms. Brenda Maddox. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm the office manager for Griffin & Griffin Towing, and I'm also going to, I'm going to hold my comment to a later time also.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the public agenda is Dr. Roberto, is it Yunes? I'm sorry, sir. Representing Absolute Medical Diagnostic regarding stroke prevention. Please state your name and your address, sir.
Yeah,
Good evening. My name is Roberto Yunes, and the 3601 Hilton Avenue. Our office is located right there behind CVS Pharmacy in the Hilton Avenue. I'm here to present a very good health prevention program, which we call Sign of Health. So we got in our mission, we have been since 1990 in the United States, doing a mission to enhance the quality of life by providing diagnostic medical services of superior quality and value for early detection and management of disease. So, we are going to come today to present a stroke prevention program. By definition, a stroke or brain tissue death can be the result of a thrombus, blockage artery, or hemorrhage, ruptured artery that prevent blood flow to the brain. There is a low level of that we call the TIA, known as a TIA, transient ischemia attack. That is a temporary blockage of blood flow in the brain, which cause a short life neurological deficit. So what causes a stroke? There is two types, that is ischemic stroke and hemorrhagic stroke, as I say. And in the ischemic, we could see that the common cause of a stroke is atherosclerosis. It's a hardening of the artery and build up plaques, leaving less space for blood flow circulation. So a blood clot may lodge in this narrow space and cause an ischemic stroke. And by the side of hemorrhage, which is more danger, is often result for uncontrolled high blood pressure that cause a weak artery to burst. So let's see some statistics. So everybody knows that stroke is the third leading cause of death in Georgia, and it's a major cause of disability. As you see in the screen, the counties for high stroke mortality rates are concentrated in the south. So we are in the top of that. So also, the stroke day rates in the statistics for 2014 to 2016, the adult age 35 plus by county also is in the south area of our country. So also, each year approximately almost 100,000 people suffer a stroke. About 600,000 are the first attacks, and 185,000 are recurrent attacks. And 3/4 in that people occur above the age of 65. The risk of having a stroke more than doubles each decade after the age of 55, and the risk of a stroke is more in a man than a woman. However, the mortality of stroke is often more in the women. The family history of a stroke increased 10-fold times the risk, and the African American, Native American, and Alaskan Native are the greatest risk compared to other ethnicities. So by a statistic, in that, we're just going to see that a stroke in that is got more time disabilities and death than other preventable disease, like we could also compare with the breast cancer, prostate cancer, which is more above the time of disability and the death. So fortunately, we got some kind of spot symptom for a stroke, which is that slide has been related to a video that we are promoting to let the people know what the symptoms are for initially prevent a stroke, which is a speak when you got a blurry speed, or the face, dropping face, or dropping arm, is a time to call 911, and go to the hospital to prevent, because the first hours of a symptom begins, more successful rate for getting out of the stroke pathology. So the stroke risks are something that you can control and something that you cannot control. So you can control by avoid smoking, obesity, poor eating habits, lack of physical activity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. But you cannot control the age, gender, family history of a stroke, or by race, as we see in the previous slide. So by that, our company, Absolute Medical Diagnostics, believes that it's better to detect a possible disease in time to avoid than having the disease and afterward treat it. This concept in mind, we have created a wellness assessment program, which is Sign of Health. It compromises with the health screening program to accurately determine the possible presence of hiding health problems.
Dr. Yunus, I hate to interrupt you, but unfortunately, sir, your 5 minutes are up. And I would love, and this is such a powerfully important presentation, I would love to let you continue, but unfortunately, we have to keep the rules the same for everybody.
Okay.
I can tell you, if you'd like to stay and wait till after the clerk's agenda at the end of the meeting, we'll be glad to bring you up and give you 3 more minutes.
Perfect. It was
Okay?
just enough.
Thank you. That's a
Thank you.
wonderful presentation. We appreciate what you do to help
you.
prevent strokes within the community.
sir.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I'm sorry. We've got Mayor Pro Tem Pugh.
Good evening. Also, if you could get with Mike King, possibly due to the show of strokes.
That would be great. Mr. City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor.
City Manager. I'm not sure if I gave you a raise or not.
Mr. Mayor, let me just say, and that's an excellent thought by the Mayor Pro Tem, but that has already been done. I am told that he came early and they did a show, and they are rebroadcasting that show on CCGTV, and so he's already done that, and that's being done.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Yunus. All right, and next up is Ms. Teresa Elamine regarding strong parental involvement in the community education. And Ms. Elamine, I would, just because we're still kind of new at the new rules and everything, remind you that you need to confine your comments to your topic tonight. We can't speak about the same issues 2 meetings in a row. It has to be 60 days.
My name is Teresa Elamine. My address is 3911 Steam Mill Road.
Welcome.
And I do want to say a little bit more about the public agenda and the appearance that people are being silenced and the importance of transparency.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
I'll save it until Thursday night at the Liberty Theater.
That'll be fine. Thank you.
I'll talk about it then.
Okay.
Because we come before the public agenda, not just to talk to you, but to talk to all the citizens
Yes,
who
ma'am.
are watching and listening.
That's correct.
That's the importance of the transparency.
Yes, ma'am.
It's been 8 years since I first brought up the idea of strong parental involvement in community education, SPICE. It's a program where parents teach other parents and their children family literacy. It's a program that was done in Durham, North Carolina, and I was the director. And after 5 years, I turned it over to the parents. What I've learned being here for these 8 years is it won't take 5 years to turn it over to the parents. We put out an application or a request for parent teachers to apply for the position. And 20 parents applied for the position on Facebook. We started the interviews last week, and 4 parents showed up. But you know, the people who need to be there are there at the time when they need to be there. And I just want to bring attention to 2 parents who showed up. Kristen Cooley and Delisha Walden. Would you please stand for a moment? Because they showed up for the parent-teacher position, but they are now the SPICE coordinators. Because I was always ready to turn it over to somebody with deep roots in this community who could carry it on. And they've recruited other parents from the ones who didn't show up to replace the ones. And so we start classes where Delisha and Kristen will be teaching other parents how to teach the program. The classes will start at the Columbus Public Library on April 2nd. And we've been given a special exception so that we can use that computer lab there for 2 nights a week for 4 weeks to train the parents. And then after that, we'll be teaching classes in that computer lab for 2 nights a week from May until June. And when those families graduate successfully, having attended 10 of the 12 sessions, they will be given computers for their homes. And the target schools are Dorothy Height, Martin Luther King Jr., Thomas Brewer, and J.D. Davis, the 4 elementary schools where the majority of students there are failing. The other 2 schools where the majority of students are failing are Baker Middle School and the Rothschilds Leadership Academy. All of these schools are in the village south of Macon Road. And so that is our focus on how we can make our contribution to crime prevention. And at the risk of being told that I'm lobbying or something, I won't mention too much about the crime prevention grant. But I think that this is the kind of program which was funded in 2017 and is even stronger now and should be considered. And I don't want to feel that I'm being retaliated against in any way because of the so-called whistleblower complaint. And I'm not bringing up the details of that, but I think I need to put that out there for the record, watching what I just watched around the towing situation. So I just want to clarify a few things, and I do call the staff to talk about it, and I do have calls into that. And I just want to say that for the record, because I'm fighting for what I know this community needs, and I am going to continue that fight. And, excuse me, Lindsay, could you help me? This should be 22 copies. We have a special program coming up on May 2nd, and you're all invited to come. It's a program on education equity, and that tells you all about it. I'll take my seat because I know that means my 5 minutes are up.
Yes, ma'am,
Thank
it does. Thank you so much. And to Delisha, Kristen, thank y'all for what you're doing for the parents and the children in the community as well. All right, and that completes the public agenda today. So we'll move into the city manager's agenda. Would you hit your button, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I've got on my agenda tonight, well, first of all, let me just say, Mr. Mayor and council members, of course, I teach a class at Columbus State University, local government management, and 2 of my students are here. They are observing city council, your behavior. I just can't say it. But no, they're here observing.
You should have told us that before we started.
They're observing city council meeting, and Richard and Brooke, if you would stand for a quick second. They're students at Columbus State University.
Welcome.
Thank you. And so, Mr. Mayor, first on my agenda, I've got amnesty months with an S, for interest and penalty on demolition liens. And I'm actually, before I ask you to vote on this matter, I'm going to ask Deputy City Manager Pam Hodge to kind of brief us on what we've got that we're asking for.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you recall, we did an amnesty period last year, and this would be what we're recommending as an amnesty period for 2019. Our current demolitions, we have 341 demolition liens recorded. Over $2 million of that is principal, so the actual cost of the demolition, it's accumulated over almost $1.2 million in interest for a total of almost $3.3 million of demolition liens, principal and interest on the books. When we did this in 2018, it was done in the month of September for a total of 8 liens. So at the time we had 340 liens on the books. 8 liens were paid during that time. We collected $39,000, so not as much as we would have liked, but we did collect quite a bit of funds related to those liens and got those properties cleared. they were required to not only pay the demolition lien, but any weed liens, and all the taxes had to be current. So all of that happened for these 8 properties. We did waive $23,000 of interest that had accumulated just on those 8 properties since their inception. And we did have a counselor request some examples, so I just pulled a few randomly of examples, some recent, some from quite a few years ago. This was a demolition that was done January 19th of 2017. You can see the before and after pictures. The principal amount was $14,954. Interest since 2017, so not quite 2 years, accumulated almost $2,000 worth of interest for a total of $16.7. There are taxes still due on this property dating back to 2012. It has a fair market value of $11,430. So that's $20,000 of just principal and taxes that are due, which exceeds the amount of the fair market value. So those are some of the issues that we have with properties. When you have a demolition on the property, the actual lien comes in higher than the value of the property. Again, another example, 125 Gates Avenue. The principal of the demolition was $6,000, accumulated $783 of interest since 2017. The fair market value on this property is $7,830. It does have one weed lien on it for $327, so we've had to go out and take care of this property one time since that demolition has happened. This is a demolition that dates back to 2003, and you can see the principal amount, so the actual amount that it cost us to do the demolition back in 2003, $8,251. It's accumulated $8,500 worth of interest, so it's doubled the cost since 2013. It's got back taxes of $1,688, but the fair market value is $10,190. So by waiving that interest charge, the cost to purchase this property is close to the fair market value. So that's why in some cases we think we can get some folks in to pay off these demolition liens by waiving that interest, and they're actually coming close to the fair market value of property. And then just the last example, this one goes back to 1999, 3,800. Over $12,000 worth of interest over that time for a total of $16,000. Again, taxes due since 2010 of just under $2,000. Fair market value is $4,870. So this one's definitely upside down in the value versus what's due in liens on the property. The 2019 amnesty period, our recommendation is to begin advertising immediately through all of our outlets, social media, the website, CCG TV, the notification. When we send out the monthly statements, we will put a notification in every statement that we send out that we're having this amnesty period. It would be May and June of 2019, and it would waive the penalty and interest just on the demolition liens. There is no penalty and interest on weed liens. So it would only be on the demolition liens, and we do require, if they want to take advantage of this program, that they satisfy any outstanding taxes that are due, as well as any weed liens or solid waste liens on that property. So we're hoping we can get some more property owners to come in and try to clean up some of these liens and hopefully get those properties back in upstanding condition.
Any questions for? All right. Motion and second to approve. Bruce, you want to cue it? We'll ask councilors, please enter their votes. It passes. And I got to congratulate staff on this initiative. Our objective should always be to get property turned around. We don't sit and hold it any longer than we have to. Get it put back on the tax rolls and adding to the quality of life of folks that might be able to move into a home there. So good job. Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Mayor.
We do have one question. I'm sorry. Mayor Pro Tem. Get your oh, wrong one. There you go.
I just want to ask, what other plans do we have in place if this doesn't work like we're hoping it will?
Well, if this does not work, what are our backup plan? I think we are going to, of course, try this, and we're going to try and work with the Land Bank Authority through the tax commissioner, tax assessor's office to see what our options are. And, but we've got to figure out how to move these properties along, because it's only going to get worse with time. As you can see, that 2003 piece of property, I mean, it's just, we can't do that for the next 10 years or 20 years. So I guess once we determine our options, we're going to come back and share that with you if this does not work.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, and I got to say that staff has been pretty impressive with the way they're focusing on trying to get some of these properties turned back around. They're working with John Hutchison and with Laura, and we're working on operating within the statutes that are provided, but being very aggressive about trying to get these things cleaned up, turned around, and back on the tax rolls.
Yes.
I know the 30 years I've been down here, we've been talking about doing something. Because it's bad when you live next door to property, and it's not kept up. And if you want to move, you couldn't sell your property because the next neighborhood looks bad.
Right.
But I think we get extremely aggressive on it. Aggressive on trying to get this property back on the books.
And, you know, this amnesty period may give them an opportunity to have someone else step forward and say, I want that piece of property, so I'll go and pay the taxes, and I'll pay the principal, and then you sign that property over to me, because the interest and all made it out of reach for them. So hopefully it's an opportunity, if they can't afford it, that they can work with someone else who they would want to have it, and they can take advantage of this opportunity together.
Now, this is property that we have a lien on.
That's correct.
Back taxes.
That we have liens on it, and in some cases, they owe back taxes on it, but they've got to pay the taxes off before we will agree to waive the interest, that they would then be able to pay the principal and for demolition and take that property back under control.
How long does property have to, well, how long does the person have to owe back taxes before we can go in and take the property?
Well, and that's a question for the tax commissioner, but typically I believe it's around 3 years. But that's a tax commissioner question. I don't know the answer to that question.
Instead of getting it to the tax commissioner for me, please.
Pardon?
Instead of, I'll refer it to.
Yeah, I can do it as a referral, and we'll get a response back to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. City Manager, continue.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, next I've got the Americans with Disabilities Act Transition Plan. It is something that we're required to submit to the Georgia Department of Transportation if we've got more than 50 employees or federal financial assistance with 15 or more employees. And so we've got to do this as a matter of requirement with Georgia Department of Transportation.
Motion second to approve. Any discussion? Please cue to vote. Councilors, enter your votes, please. And it's approved.
Next, I've got a juvenile justice incentive grant.
All right. Motion to approve items 3 and 4. It's seconded. Any discussion on either one? All right. We'll just take a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? They both pass.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a few purchases. I've got Double Church's pool resurfacing. It's $46,649. We're asking your approval.
Mayor, move item A through F.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, F is off the table, so.
F is?
A through E.
All right, there's a motion and a second to approve the purchases item A through E. Any that anyone else wants pulled or questioned? All right, can we cue that vote, Bruce? Can we do that one? If y'all please enter your votes. They pass. Purchases pass.
Mr. Mayor, I am going to defer back to the city attorney for the pension update at this time.
Okay, I think, Mr. City Attorney, do you want to conduct that, or do you want HR?
Well, we'll call up the ordinance, but I think Ms. Hollowell wants to come over with the actuary, Mr. Chuck Carr, who is now here, and make a few comments. But essentially, this would correct some errors that occurred in calculations for early retirees up to a certain point, and then correct the procedure going forward. And it would also put in a new up-to-date mortality table. But Ms. Hollowell's here and Mr. Carr are here. They can answer any questions about the history leading to this if council has any questions.
Welcome, Chuck.
And so, Mr. Mayor, we'll hear from the director, our HR director first.
Sure.
And then you can formally introduce Mr. Carr, okay?
Okay, all right. Good afternoon, council.
Good afternoon.
As the city attorney has mentioned, there is an ordinance before you that we're recommending that you approve. But before we do that, I did want to just provide a brief summary, just a brief overview of the purpose of the ordinance, and then have our actuary consultant, Mr. Chuck Carr, who is here, come and give a second briefing and answer any questions. I did provide ahead of schedule a document summary to the council, so I hope you all have had a chance to look at that and review it. And so I won't go over that in detail, but I did want to just hit a couple of the highlights of that particular document and, entertain any questions if you have any. Basically, what happened earlier this year, our actuary consultant discovered pension calculations for early retirees were being calculated incorrectly. The pension calculations for early retirees in certain parts of the calculations, the normal retirement age of 65 was used to calculate each retiree's pension rather than the actual age of retirement. Although early retiree benefits were still adjusted for early retirement, this adjustment was not as much as it should have been, and this resulted in early retirees' pension being slightly higher than they otherwise would have been. So this incorrect calculation was discovered by our actuary consultant, and he's going to respond to it briefly here. Also, I'll mention that we're not sure how the error occurred. It was determined that early retirees have been calculated erroneously. Their retirement pensions have been calculated erroneously since 1999 or soon thereafter. It was also determined that the pensions were accurately calculated, however, for those members who retired at normal retirement age or older. Since 1999, there have been 674 early retirements and 864 normal retirements. We requested that our software vendor, Pension Gold, provide a sampling of 150 early retirees who retired between 2014 and earlier this year. The purpose of the sampling was to determine the difference in calculation when normal retirement age was applied versus the actual retirement age. The average difference is $61.63 monthly per retiree. To correct this pension calculation error, we are recommending and proposing an ordinance amending both pension plans to correct the calculations going forward. And we are asking council to amend both the general government and public safety pension plans and revise the definition of actuarial equivalent in section 2.4 of the pension plan. Specifically, this amendment will accomplish three things. The amendment spells out the method used for actuarial equivalence calculations up to May 1 of 2019 and blesses retroactively, even though it was arguably inconsistent with the plan. This means that all employees who have already retired early will see no change in their benefit calculation. The second part of the ordinance, the amendment specifies the usage of the correct age factors going forward from May 1, 2019. And the amendment changes the mortality table that is used for the purpose of calculating actuarial equivalence from the UP 1984 table, mortality table, to an annually adjusted table, which is calculated by the IRS and which can be more easily run with the Pension Gold software rather than manually inputting data from the 1984 table each time a calculation is made. The pension board met at its March 13th meeting. They proposed this amendment and recommend its adoption before council today. If I would like to ask our Chuck Carr, our actuary consultant, to just kind of maybe in plain English talk a little bit about this particular era and the proposed changes.
It's good to see all of you again.
Good evening.
So there's three things basically I just wanted to touch on. First of all, Rita did such a great job of summarizing the issue. First of all, you may ask, why do we need to incorporate into an ordinance, the sort of the blessing of what's happened in the past? My understanding, and of course I'm not an attorney, but my understanding of that is that if we don't have a corrective ordinance, then those of us who are involved with the plan and the plan administrator, will be obligated to go back and recalculate literally decades worth of pensions for these early retirees, that's problematic in and of itself because it would be a huge undertaking, and I'm not even sure at this point if, for some who've maybe been retired for many, many years, if it could even be done. Not to mention, the ill will and the problems that it would create from that standpoint. So, because the good news is that two pieces of good news. First of all, this error, which came about really when due to the worksheets that were provided by, I don't know if it was the prior actuary or consultant many, many years ago, had provided some worksheets for the staff to calculate benefits with respect to the optional forms of payment. You may recall that the pension plan doesn't just pay a single life annuity. It offers a variety of options to the participants. They can have various periods certain where they have a guarantee for so many years their benefit will be paid, or they can choose, it's very common for people to choose a joint and survivor pension where a portion of their pension will go to their surviving spouse, for example. So I would say probably most people do choose one of those options. The options are not equal in dollar amount. They're not equal to the standard form of payment. You have to take that standard form of payment and then adjust it. Typically, it's adjusted down, so there's a reduction, especially if you're talking about providing a joint and survivor pension, because the plan would be paying a pension for two different lives as opposed to just one. So there is a reduction. Usually it could be anywhere from 5, 10, 15%, maybe 20%, depending on the option they're choosing. And of course, the amount of the reduction also is absolutely dependent on the ages of both the retiree and the joint annuitant, or the spouse, or whoever the beneficiary would be. So there were some worksheets that had been provided many, many years ago, decades ago, to interpolate factors, because the actuarial factors that are used to do that calculation are only given, they're in charts or tables by whole age. And so if you have someone retiring at, say, age 55 and a half, you have to look at the age 55 factor and the age 56 factor and then do an interpolation between the two. So there are worksheets that have been created many, many years ago to help the plan administrator do that calculation. And I think what happened was that at some point along the way, those worksheets just got misinterpreted, because what happened as a practical matter was they ended up sort of looking up the age 65 conversion factors as opposed to the age 55 or 58 or 60. The effect of that is that, fortunately, this is the bit of good news, the effect of that is that those early retirees who chose an option got a little bit higher pension. I mean, we would be having a different discussion, I think, if people had not gotten the full amount of the pension they were entitled to. But in this case, there was a slight overpayment. Of course, it goes back to the point of their retirement. The reason we need to correct it is because under the Internal Revenue Code, among other things, we have to administer the plan in accordance with its terms. So without this corrective ordinance, the terms of the plan would say we have to go back and have to, recalculate and redo. And as I said, that's very problematic, and it would just create a lot of different issues. So with the corrective ordinance, because City Council has the power to amend the plan, you can amend the plan this way, and that in essence blesses what has happened in the past. Now, the next thing if I were sitting standing in your shoes, I would think, is this going to add to the cost of the plan? That's the other piece of good news I wanted to mention, which is because when I value the plan, I'm provided the data each year. One of the things I'm given is the list of retirees along with the benefit that they are actually being paid. I don't see the details on how it was calculated. So the good news is all of these retirees who have been paid a slightly bigger pension than maybe what they were entitled to, that's already been baked into the numbers, into my actuarial numbers, and into the contributions that the city makes. So this ordinance will have no impact as far as suddenly creating additional liability or anything like that. I've already reflected the actual dollar amount of the benefits that are being paid. So that's a bit of good news. The other, just to shift gears slightly, when we were having the discussion, we being some of the staff and then ultimately the retirement board, when we were having discussions about this issue, I suggested that maybe because your actuarial equivalence basis, meaning the mortality table that's used to calculate this conversion for optional forms of payment, that has gotten very much out of date. Right now, your ordinance says that it's to be based on something called the UP 84, and the 84 is 1984. So we are right now using mortality tables for this calculation that are 35 years old. What I suggested is that you consider doing what the city of Macon actually did several years ago, and I've had a number of other clients do that. I just mentioned Macon because they're kind of a peer city, here in Georgia, obviously. But my suggestion was to, rather than name a specific mortality table where we would then at some point down the road possibly have to talk about updating it, is to move to something, we commonly call it the IRS mortality table, but basically every year the IRS publishes a mortality table for this purpose. Now, private plans are mandated under federal law to use that table for certain calculations. Obviously, that has no applicability in the public sector, and we're not required to use the IRS table, but nevertheless, it is a unisex table, and it's something that does get updated automatically each and every year. And so, theoretically at least, if we move to that standard, then we won't have to have the discussion about updating mortality going forward because it will happen automatically. Every year, the calculations will be, reflect the little additional life expectancy or whatever has happened. The other nice thing about going to the new tables is that your Pension Gold, your pension administration software, those folks they do this calculation as a part of their system. I mean, they have to do it for many, many other plans. So they already have these tables built into their system. It can happen automatically. They have all the coding there. If we ask them to change, if we stay on the current mortality basis, the UP84, then what's going to happen is they're going to have to go and change some coding. I think there is probably a cost for them to do that. I don't know what it is, but anyway, they're going to have to change coding to try to change how they're calculating the factors, whereas if we move to the new mortality, this is something that's built into their system, and it will happen automatically, be seamless, and really none of us have to think about it anymore, specifically. So, and that, as the actuary for the plan, that gives me a lot of reassurance that going forward, these calculations will be done correctly because it's being done by software that's used by many, many clients around the country. It sort of goes beyond, the calculation is no longer sort of at the mercy of some worksheets that you have here in-house, where we have to worry about this again. So that's basically what the ordinance is doing. It's to bless what's happened in the past, just so we don't have to go back and try to redo. It's at no cost, additional cost, because I've already got those increased benefits built into the numbers in your valuations. And then finally, to move us to that new standard effective, I believe it was May 1, right, Lucy? May 1 was the date. So to move to the new standard May 1st, that's when the software people said they can have all this good to go, and then hopefully we'll get on to bigger and better things moving forward. So any questions for me as far as the actuarial aspect of this whole thing?
Any questions from council? Comments? Mr. Carr, thank you, because I understand you've made sort of a mad dash to get here.
I did. I had a meeting with City of Dalton at 3 o'clock, but we were done by about 3:45, and so the only bad part was I had to face some Atlanta rush hour traffic, but I made it. So.
Well, thank you for making all that effort to get here and help us go through that. All right, there's an ordinance offered.
And we'll bring it back with that explanation in 2 weeks for a vote. And that's all we had listed.
Good deal. Any other questions from council? All right.
Mr. Mayor, I've got 2 additional updates, and I'm going to call on our HR Director, Aretha Hollowell, to do critical vacancies. I know we've got some public safety people here, and I'd like to go ahead and get to that.
Mayor and Council, I have hopefully it'll be a brief presentation on critical vacancies with the Columbus Consolidated Government. The economy is doing really well economically. Most folks that want a job, they can get a job. And that's a good thing. But it presents a challenge for us also as a city government, in that most people that want a job can get a job. But sometimes they can get a job that will pay more than a job that we're offering, or the benefits are a little bit better than the benefits that we're offering. So while the economy is good, it just creates a challenge for us today. So I wanted to talk with you real briefly about some critical vacancies that we are experiencing with the Columbus Consolidated Government. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm not asking you to make a decision today. I just want to make you aware of this for your consideration. So when we talk about critical vacancies, I want to provide just a brief definition of what we mean. A critical vacancy for us means a position has been vacant for at least 6 months or longer. This is a position that's required in order for the organization to function effectively. This is typically a hard-to-fill position due to the specialized area of work. And the skills for these type positions are typically in high demand. So we've identified 9 positions that I want to share with you this afternoon that we deem to be critical in nature and impact the efficiency of governmental operations. The first position that I wanted to mention to you is not going to be real new because we've talked about this one before, and that is the position of a police officer. In the police department, there are a total of 521 positions. Of those 521 positions, about 100 of those are non-sworn positions. All of the other positions are sworn. The police officer, there are 268 positions for a police officer. Of those 268 positions, 80 of those positions are vacant. And if you ask the police department, that number has moved up to 84 just in the last couple of days because they've done some promotions. So that total number of vacancies in the police department for just the position of police officers is at 80 or 84. The entry-level pay for a police officer is right at $40,588. And the position of police officer has been vacant. They've had vacancies that they've had difficulty filling since 2007. And in my presentation, I'll tell you, we'll go a little bit deeper into the impact of those vacancies. So the next position is that of a sheriff deputy in the sheriff's office.
So before you leave there, when you say police officer,
Yes.
just go ahead and qualify that a little bit. That's not a corporal, it's not a sergeant, it's not a lieutenant, a captain, or a major.
Correct.
It's the police officer,
That's correct. It's-
patrolman. Okay.
Exactly. 268 of those, a total of about 488 ranked
Sure.
positions, police, sworn officer positions. So the sheriff's office, there's the sheriff deputy, and I'll combine these two, the sheriff's deputy and a sheriff's corrections officer in the sheriff's department. The department has a total of 385 positions. Of those 385 positions, 144 of those are sheriff deputies, and 84 of those are corrections officers. For each of those positions, they have 19 vacancies in each position, for a total of 38 vacancies for a sheriff deputy and a corrections officer. The entry-level pay for a sheriff deputy is at $39,674, and for a corrections officer is at $36,236. And those positions they've had continuous vacancies since 2017. The next critical position is the firefighter, EMT, fire medic position in the fire and EMS department. The total number of positions in that department is at 376. Of those positions, 209 of those are those firefighter, EMT, and fire medic positions, and they currently have 20 vacancies. The annual salary is at $34,640, entry level to $39,674, and they have had continuous vacancies since 2018. The next critical position I want to mention to you is that of a bus operator position in the Department of Metro Transit. They have a total of 90 positions in that department, and of those 90 positions, 68 of those are bus operators. And currently, they have 20 vacancies in that department. The entry-level pay for a bus operator is at $31,519. And those positions, they've had continuous vacancies for bus operators since 2017. The next position is that of a corrections officer out at Muskogee County Prison. At Muskogee County Prison, there are 118 positions in the department. Of those 118 positions, 99 of those are corrections officers, and they currently have 7 vacancies. The entry-level or starting pay for a corrections officer at MCP is at $34,640, and they've had continuous vacancies since 2018. The next position is that of a waste equipment operator with a CDL, that's a commercial driver's license, at the Public Works Department, as well as a fleet maintenance tech, which is a mechanic at the Public Works Department. The department has a total of 418 positions. Of those positions, a waste equipment operator, that's a truck driver. Pretty much these are your sanitation drivers. There are a total of 117 of those positions. Of that 117, there are 6 vacancies. The entry-level or starting pay for a waste equipment operator is at $31,519, and there have been continuous vacancies for waste equipment operators since 2014. And for a fleet maintenance tech or a mechanic, There is a total of 28 positions, and there are currently 5 vacancies. The starting pay is annually is at $28,500, and they've had continuous vacancies for fleet maintenance techs since 2017. Also in Public Works, in Metra, they also have fleet maintenance techs or mechanics. For that department, again, there are 90 total positions. There are 15 positions that are fleet maintenance techs, and they currently have 2 vacancies for a fleet maintenance tech, and that pay, again, is $28,500, and they've had continuous vacancies since 2017. So then I wanted to just share with you, this begins to show some of the impact, the challenges with these particular positions. If you look at a police officers, in 2018, they hired 40 police officers, and that looks good. They hired 40, but they had 56 separations. So they were to the negative of 16 positions. It's as if it's somewhat of a revolving door, and you'll see that throughout here. That's a 20% turnover rate. For sheriff deputy, in 2018, they hired 13 sheriff deputies, but they lost 24. That's a negative of 11. For a corrections officer with the sheriff's office, in 2018, they hired 30, and they lost 13. For a firefighter, EMS and paramedic, in 2018, they hired 17, but they lost 24, a negative of 7. For a bus operator, they hired 27, but they hired 27, but they lost 24, so they retained 3. For a corrections officer at Muskogee County Prison in 2018, they hired 26, but they lost 38. That's a negative 12. And for Public Works, for a waste equipment operator in 2018, they hired 32, and they lost 15. And for their fleet maintenance tech 1, 2, and 3, they hired 5, but they lost 13. That's a negative 8. And for Metra, with their fleet maintenance techs, they hired 4, but they lost 7. That's a negative 3. So what are their recruitment and retention challenges? Why can't they recruit enough people, and why can't they retain the ones that they recruit? Now, for each of these positions, the reasons for recruitment and retention are going to be very similar. In some departments, you'll see they'll have a few differences, but for the most part, their recruitment and retention challenges are very similar. So here with a police officer, recruitment and retention challenges, the number one issue the department believes is competitive pay, lack of qualified applicants. And this runs through I hear this so often, and of course I'm in HR and I see it, just trying to get enough applicants that are qualified to meet the major, to be able to do the major duties and quality. That's a challenge. The type of work that's being required. And they also suggest that there's a lack of recruitment incentives where they're competing with these same type skills are in demand in other areas, and they're competing. So one of the things the department feels is they need additional recruiting incentives. In the police department, I'll note that they are required to meet certain standards for accreditation and recertification, and that hedges on their retention challenges. So the same as I said, and I won't go over all of these, the same types of retention and recruitment challenges exist in the Sheriff's Department. The competitive pay, long work hours, shift work, the type of work. Fire and EMS, you'll see the same. The lack of qualified applicants, general lack of applicants, shift work, weekend work, competitive pay. In Metra, the same issues. One of the things I mentioned here in Metra with regard to recruitment challenges, certainly the long work hours, and a lot of the long work hours and the shift in work is because they have a shortage anyway. So the personnel that they have are having to work much longer hours. Some of them cite, again, the lack of a sign-on bonus, here incentives to encourage recruitment, and then those retention things, incentives to encourage the bus operators or the fleet maintenance techs to stay. They cite those as issues. Just to go a little bit further in depth, and I'll be real brief on these, talking about bus operators, Metra, for example, has a particular recruitment issue in that the school district is looking for bus operators too, and Fort Benning especially is looking for bus operators. And that's been a long-time challenge for Metra in that they are recruiting and trying to hire and retain the same type of employee that the school district needs and that Fort Benning needs. So at Fort Benning, we came across this just a couple of weeks ago where they're hiring 16 bus operators with CDLs, and they are paying $17.50 an hour, whereas our Metro bus operators hourly pay is at $15.50 an hour, and these are full-time positions. And I know from talking to the director there, they've lost several bus operators to Fort Benning just recently. This is just another quick slide on a headline news story that was out of Atlanta with regard to their MARTA bus system there, noting driver unrest, where the union was in the negotiation with the bus operators for better pay. And this was an untimely incident that happened where they had over 80 bus operators to call out sick because they were not pleased with the way the contract was going. And this also happened during the time just before the Super Bowl was supposed to happen. But needless to say, they did resolve it, and the bus operators returned to work. And I'll just mention, I brought up the school district, who we compete with for bus operators. They have addressed or attempted to address their bus operator issues by providing a total incentive package for them valued at over $500,000 that include different types of performance incentives to encourage recruitment and retention. Our pay, I will note, that is comparable to the school district for a bus operator. The average pay starts at $14.66 an hour to $18.07 an hour. So our pay is comparable to that. And at MCP, again, their recruitment and retention challenges are similar. I'll just mention this one thing with MCP that they were careful to point out is one of the things, the challenges in terms of their recruitment and retention is they no longer have the sign-on bonus, and they cite that as a challenge, and they don't receive pay reform such as the police department and the sheriff. So sometimes the folks at MCP will leave and go to the sheriff, and they'll go to the police department because they have pay reform, they have sign-on bonuses and those sorts of things. And the only other thing I'll mention on Public Works in terms of retention, Pat Bigler was careful to point out all the competitive pay type of work, lack of available applicants, but they also cite that a lot of times they lose employees because of inmate supervision. Sometimes, you hire them and they say, yeah, I want to do this type of work, but after a period of time, they decide that it's not what they want to do. So I'll say this also in terms of how we promote and advertise for our positions in terms of recruitment. We have a fantastic tool in our application management system. It's internet-based. Many jobs, organizations will pick up our jobs. Not only are they on our internet site, but they're on governmentjobs.com, which is a national site. It's going to pick up all our jobs. Indeed.com, Glassdoor. We're on social media with LinkedIn, with Facebook. So our jobs are out there, but we're obviously this is a pain for the departments, and they are looking for opportunities to recruit, be able to recruit better, and then retain their workforce that they currently have. That's all that I have. The departments, there's a department representative from each of these departments that I've talked to today. So they are here if you have questions, specific questions of those departments about their recruitment and retention strategies, particularly related to these critical positions that I've mentioned.
All right, any questions of the HR director or any questions of the department heads that are here? Doesn't appear there are any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hollowell.
So, Mr. Mayor, my final update is Liberty District. Director Rick Jones is going to speak briefly.
Okay, and let me thank our public safety heads and some of the other department heads that are here for this. We appreciate what you do, and thank you for being here this evening.
Good evening again. While my computer is doing its thing here, let me take the opportunity, the shameless opportunity here to remind you about next Monday. We let you a flyer for the dedication of the completion of the Clemens River Walk at the Bibb Mill Event Center at 2 o'clock. In the case of rain, we do have plans for that. We will actually go inside. So if anybody is concerned about the weather that day, we encourage you to come on out anyway for that. We will also run some golf cart shuttles from the parking lot, because that parking lot is so elongated in terms of configuration, it makes it a long walk for some folks. We will provide you a shuttle to the service from there. So if you will, please make that on put that on your calendars for next Monday at 2 p.m. at the River Mill Event Center. I've been asked to come and talk briefly about the Liberty District and where we are. You may recall that last year you appointed a committee to help us look and plan for the future and desired needs for the Liberty itself. I will tell you that we have had 4 meetings. We met as late as October 22nd of last year, and again on the last meeting we tried to have was on February 11th. The whole intention of this committee was to, again, like I said, to look at the existing plan we have for the Liberty District, make a determination about whether we should utilize that plan or to modify it or basically scrap it and start over again. Our first 2 meetings, we had really good attendance for both of those, had a lot of good conversation. We talked through some things. We were at the point really of getting into the meat of the document, the existing plan itself. And I guess I made the mistake of giving homework, because we were going to look at in the first 10 or so pages in that document and come back and go through it. The January meeting, we had really only one person in attendance for that meeting. We had one that came to us and said that they could not be there because they were sick, and we understood that. We tried again to reschedule that meeting for February. We had 3 at that meeting. And so I'm not saying it's to call anybody out on that committee. I'm just calling to let you know that for the most part, our attendance for some reason has dropped off considerably. And I guess what the planning department is looking for more than anything else is some guidance here. Do we want to go forward with this, continue on with it? And if we do want to continue on with it, I'm going to ask for your help at the same time in terms of going back and talking to the ones that you appointed or at least asked to be on this committee to come forward and stay with us on this. So that's where we are right now. I wish I had a better report in terms of telling you we've made significant progress, but right now we're kind of at a standstill and just need to know which direction we want to go.
Councilor Huff?
Yes, I did receive some feedback from some of the ones that couldn't make it. They wanted to know if you could possibly make the meetings after 5 o'clock because they're working during the time you're having them during lunchtime.
Okay. All right. We had not heard that. That's good information.
Yeah, a couple of people, especially one of the ones I appointed. She's in the middle of her workday at that point.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, any other questions? Any other ideas to try to stimulate activity and attendance? I tell you, I think it's a critical committee, and I think, I wasn't aware they were held at noon. I think certainly it's a great idea to have it after work hours when people are more likely to be able to attend. But this is such a significant point in time, I think, for the Liberty District, simply because of all the development and all the energy that's taking place in and around South Columbus and in the way uptown. It's kind of mirroring what we did with the original planned city of Columbus, where it starts there by the river, which is uptown, and it starts spreading out. I mean, we've got City Mills that we're working on going north up 2nd Avenue. You got the viaduct as we continue to try to revitalize that, closing the gap with Midtown. And I think the Liberty is the next logical block in that overall process. So it's critical that we get input from people who really, really want to be on that committee. And, so I would urge council, just check with your representative and ask them. No shame in not having time to participate, but make sure that they're invested in the process, because they're a critical piece of it. So.
Well, Mr. Mayor, with that, that concludes my agenda.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jones. All right. Any further questions of the city manager? If not, we'll move on to the clerk of council, Ms. Davis.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For the clerk's agenda, item number 1, for the Golf Authority, we have a letter of resignation from Mr. Dayton Preston.
Motion second to receive with regrets. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? It's carried.
Item number 2 is a Public Safety Advisory Committee. They're requesting to declare the seat of Delphine Abram, that's the District 3 representative, as vacant.
Motion second to declare the seat of District 3 representatives vacant. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Carries. Motion second that the minutes of the boards are received. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Carries.
Item number 4 are board appointments. The first are the mayor's appointments that are ready to be confirmed. And Mr. Mayor is recommending that all of these confirmations happen. The first is for the Crime Prevention Board. We have Lorraine Moore.
Motion second to approve Ms. Lorraine Moore. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion second to approve all of the mayor's appointments, which would be Lieutenant Miles, Dr. Vickers, and Mr. LaBranche. Motion second. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? They're confirmed.
Did I hear a motion to confirm the Deferred Compensation Board?
So moved. Second.
Motion second to confirm Mr. Jackson, Major Jackson. All those in favor, please say aye. Blackman. I said Jackson. I apologize. We left his name off the back. Thank you.
I got it wrong anyway.
It does, but it is Freddie Blackman.
It should be Blackman.
I apologize. I'm just reading instead of thinking. I apologize. No, it's Major Blackman from the police department. So all those in favor of confirming Mr. Blackman, please say aye. Any opposed? He's confirmed.
And then finally, the Housing Authority.
Okay. Motion second to confirm Mr. Alexander. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Mr. Alexander is confirmed.
Then we have council appointments to be confirmed. We have for the Commission on International Relations and Cultural Liaison Encounters, Mary Jean Quiller. For the Planning Advisory Commission, Mr. Larry Derby and Dr. Xavier McCaskey. For the Golf Authority, Richard Mahone. If we can take one motion for all of those.
Okay. Motion and a second to approve all of the council, or to confirm all of the council nominees. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? They are all confirmed.
Then we have council district seats that are ready for nomination. The Community Development Advisory Council and the Recreation Advisory Board. These are Council District 6 nominees. Then we have one vote tabulation for the Golf Authority. For the seat of Sam Warren, we have James B. Houston, Jr. This is Councilor Allen's nominee. And we have Lloyd French. This is Councilor Crabb's nominee. Is the council ready to take a vote?
Yes.
Councilor Allen?
Houston.
Councilor Crabb? Councilor Davis? Councilor Garrett? Councilor House? Councilor Huff? Mayor Pro Tem?
It's inconclusive.
Yes, we have an inconclusive vote. We have 2 for Mr. French, and we have 5 for Mr. Houston. And so we will bring that back for the next meeting. We have council appointments. Any nominations will be listed for the next meeting. For the Animal Control Advisory Board, Councilor Garrett is nominating Sabine Stoll for the new position, the Animal Rescue Shelter Representative, and we will bring this back for the next meeting for confirmation. For the Board of Historic and Architectural Review, Councilor Woodson is nominating Robert Anderson for his previous seat that was declared vacant.
Yeah, may want to check with Councilor Woodson just to confirm that that's what she intended. She might have meant another name.
Thank you, will do, Mr. Mayor. For the,
Hold on, we got a Mayor Pro Tem.
Position for the Animal Control Advisory Board.
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Representative from the Animal Rescue Shelter. Do you have to take that back to wait a week to confirm or? I thought if it was a specific seat, and that name was sent in by that board, or by that.
Does Ms. Stoll work for the Animal Rescue Shelter? Is she a shelter representative? She works for Animal Arts, so she is an Animal Rescue Shelter representative.
And we don't have to take that back up. We don't have to wait another week to vote on her, do we?
I don't think so. I think we just have to get a representative from that industry. I defer to the clerk.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
So we can vote on tonight, vote on that person tonight.
Well, it is a council appointment, and we do, for any council appointments that are not district seats, we do allow for any other council members to make nominations and bring the confirmation back the following week.
Okay.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk, continue.
For the Commission on International Relations and Cultural Liaison Encounters, Councilor Barnes is nominating Harry Underwood for a vacant seat, and we will bring that back for confirmation. For the Crime Prevention Board, Timothy Keith Weeks is eligible to succeed himself. He is interested in serving another term if a member of council wants to.
Councilor Allen.
And we will bring this back at the next meeting. We have 2 seats that are open for nominations, Winston Bailey and Gregory Wagner. For the Deferred Compensation Board, Tyler Townsend serves in the Plan Expert volunteer position. He is interested in serving another term if a member of council wants to. Thank you, Councilor Allen. Dr. Forrest Tolley, this is the city manager's appointment. For the Employee Benefits Committee, we have a recommendation for Captain William Ron to succeed Captain James Pope, and we will bring this back for the next meeting. Linda Lunsford is interested in serving another term if a member of council, and we will bring this one back for the next meeting. Laura Johnson is interested in serving another term. She's serving in the department director or assistant director position. If a member Councilor Huff is renominating her, and we will bring this back for the next meeting. Jennifer McDonald, this is a recommendation from the Human Resources Department, And we will bring this back once the survey has been completed for general government employees, as well as Division Chief Marie Harrell. This selection is made by the public safety employees, and once Human Resources has completed this survey, we will bring that back as well. Seth Brown, this is a recommendation from the Human Resources Department as well. And he's not eligible to succeed himself. I'm sorry, Councilor Huff. Yes, this is a selection by the public safety employees, and Human Resources typically sends out a survey of the public safety employees to get their recommendation. You're welcome, Councilor Huff. Then we have Drell Short. This is a selection by the general government employees, and once that survey has been completed as well, we will bring that one back. For the Gulf Authority, Councilor Allen is nominating Jimmy Montfort to succeed Dayton Preston, who has resigned. We will bring this back at the next meeting for confirmation. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I know we have a request to go into executive session, but Dr. Younes has waited to the end of the clerk's agenda for an additional 3 minutes, and I want to thank him for his patience.
Sir, I just want to let you know that we got to offer a free screening testing.
Well, come to the mic. Why don't you tell us?
That was the last part. Thank you very
Yes,
much
sir.
for letting me get that. The last slide, I don't know if you can put there, our phone number is 706-763-8223. And again, it's the last slide, just scroll down to the line, so that point that, just to let them know that we got it from April 1st to April 15th, we got that free testing and screening for a stroke because we are in a steps to prevention of stroke. And it's going to be free screening. We do every year, and we also participate in a lot of outreach, in the community to screening the carotid cerebral circulation to be sure the people are in the healthway. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for what you do in the community. Oh, hang on a
Have a nice
second.
day.
Do what now?
Thank you.
What is the location?
It doesn't have in the slide, I'm sorry. It's 3601 Hilton Avenue. It's the next building, CVS Pharmacy in the Hilton Avenue. And we operate by appointment because the testing is like a half-hour testing to be sure the cardiovascular circulation is in good health. Okay?
Super.
Thank you very
again,
much.
sir,
Thank
for
you
what
for
you do, and thank you for your patience. All right. We have a request to go into a request to go into executive session on litigation. We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, let's clear the. Executive session, we discussed litigation, no votes were taken. Mr. City Attorney.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I'll call up the final resolution of the evening to settle the claims of Walter Carter for a motor vehicle accident that occurred on January 24, 2017, for the amount of $20,000, and it's ready for a vote.
I have a motion and a second to approve that resolution. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? It is approved. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.